Thank you, and that was a really good introduction for a Whale Congress. Thank you. So, my name is Isolde, and you know the title already. And I was here for the first time 10 years ago. Can you hear me, by the way? Yes. So my name is Isolde, and I was here for the first time 10 years ago. And I did my master's thesis here, looking on the role of river and inflow for the scale van die Bees ecology. And then I continued research and I did my PhD in Umeå in Sweden in 2022, but this time on freshwater systems and how climate change affects the ecology in freshwater systems. And then I did a postdoc, and I have walked this path because I really wanted to come back here and actually being able to answer what is the role of riverine inflow for the bay. And luckily, we were successful in writing a grant, and we got a FORMAS grant. And FORMAS is a Swedish government research council for sustainable development. And it's a 4-year early career research mobility grant, and it contains salary and a small amount of research. And it has a mobility component, so it connects researchers internationally. And that's why you will see quite some international research today. I will not only focus on Husavik today. And the title of the funded project is Terrestrial Freshwater Inputs Threaten Coastal Resource Quality. It is a big team, and we have together a lot of skills, extensive field skills, lab skills, chemistry skills, GIS skills, and we also cover a wide range of institutions. So Umeå University in Sweden, University of Oslo, Aarhus University, of course the famous Marianne in the Iceland University, Greenland Climate Research Center, and Swedish Agricultural Sciences University, and Armenia University. So why do I say that there is such a strong connection between the land and the coast in the north? That is because the most freshwaters are in the north. This is a map showing the freshwaters globally, and you can see that they are mostly situated in the north. And on top of that, sorry for the blurry image, but this image is supposed to show how shallow the marine waters are. And you can see that in the north there's a lot of light blue, indicating that the waters are really shallow. So they are more under influence of whatever comes from the land. And of course there is more land on the northern hemisphere. So what global changes do we have that affect northern waters? There are several processes going on, and there's a lot of knowledge and a lot of research. So there's global warming. This is a NASA figure with data between 1880 and 2022 showing the temperature anomaly, and you can see that obviously the anomaly is highest in the northern latitudes on the Arctic regions. There's a global warming, but mostly in northern regions. And this has caused wetting, so more precipitation, more rain events. And this wetting and warming together resulted in terrestrial greening. And this is a picture by Gui, 2014, showing polar circle greening. So in many areas, the land is greening. There's more vegetation coming because of this wetting and warming. There are some areas where it's also browning, but netto there is a greening. We have melting ice, especially between, well, we don't have that long record, but especially between 1980 and 2005, the sea ice extent has been reduced significantly, and there's a trend of the last 10 years that it's kind of stabilized, but a lot of more water coming into systems. And also, there's a lot of permafrost along the coast that is melting, even contributing more to freshwater inputs. And we also have changing land use. One example is Sweden. Sweden consists out of 73% forest, and 80% of this forest is cultivated, meaning it is just clear cut off and harvested and redone again, besides the agriculture. So a huge amount of our land is managed by humans and changed by humans. And then there's soil erosion. Iceland is a really good example of that. More in the south. This is a map of that. So soil erosion means that there will be sediments also going into the water systems and eventually into the coasts. And that is sediment, but in Northern America and Scandinavia and Russia, we have lake browning, meaning that if there is organic material stored in the land, it is now mobilized and entering the waters and literally coloring it brown, as you can see here. And this is an ongoing trend still. And we see clear waters on the land, especially in regions with little vegetation, so no carbon in the soils, such as alpine or mountainous areas or Arctic areas. And we see this very colored high DOC or dissolved organic carbon water that is very nutrient rich in regions connected to organic soils. So boreal regions with forests and forestry, or melting permafrost with organic soils. So all in all, these processes have contributed to coastal freshening. There's more fresh water flowing into our systems, and especially in the coast. And this is not just water, it also contains sediments, organic matter, nutrients. It can contain many substances that can alter the coastal ecology. And in this picture, I just want to show the difference between organic inputs on the left picture and sediment pictures on the right pictures, on the right picture. So this DOC along the gradient, on the left side you see a figure, and you should imagine that on the x-axis it's a DOC gradient. So carbon and nutrients are increasing, but light is decreasing in the water because it is colored, obviously. And if you would talk about sediment going in, probably there's less carbon and less nutrients, but the light is still decreased. So there are different systems and different constraints. And this influx of sediments and organic carbon in lakes causes water stratification. So stratification is the not being able to mix of two water layers, either because they're different in temperature or in chemistry. And on the left side, you see a modeling study of lakes. On the top is a very brown lake, and on the bottom, a very low lake. And on the x-axis, it's days, so 0 is January, and around the middle, it is the summer. And the top lake that is brown does not mix. So in the summer, it becomes very warm on the top, but very cold in the bottom. Whereas a clear water lake would completely mix. And this is similar patterns are happening in coastal areas. And because these lakes don't mix very well, we see that the surface waters are warming even more because of this not inability to mix, both in lakes and in coastal areas. And because they don't mix, not only the temperature increases, but also nutrients, because of all the biological processes that happen there. It changes the biogeochemistry. And also because it doesn't mix in lakes, it is very clear that bottoms of lakes become anoxic, so fish cannot live there because they need the oxygen to breathe. But similar things are happening in coastal regions as well, maybe not to the same extent as in lakes, but yeah. So there's a lot of global changes, altered land, and altered freshwaters and coasts, and obviously this impacts the ecology. So when we think about a food web, primary production is at the base. This is a simplified classic food web. You can put a whale instead of a fish. I should have done that, but I didn't do that. And algae are fed by the sun. But actually, we know that it's not just algae that can feed into a system. It can also be this new DOC that can sustain a system via the microbial loop. So bacteria can eat the organic material and be a food source directly for zooplankton. And that is called basal production. So instead of primary production, we should talk about basal production. And if you talk about algae and bacteria, they're actually very different. So I now refer to algae as photosynthesis, needing light to grow and create biomass. And bacterial production it can use the sunlight, but it can use DOC directly. It's also dependent. It can use light, but it also needs nutrients and temperature. But when we look what happens to these two groups when there is an increase of DOC, is that on the left side you see autotrophic production, so algae production initially increases because there is more nutrients coming into the system, and eventually decreasing because it becomes light limited and the algae need light to grow. Whereas the bacteria, they don't necessarily need light and they can just continue growing across the DOC gradient. So the more carbon we put into the systems, the more likely it is that there will be a shift from algal to bacterial-dominated systems along DOC gradients. And we see this in freshwaters, but it can also happen in coastal waters. So algae and bacteria are very different. The biomass of algae in terms of atoms is carbon, nitrogen, phosphorus. This is called stoichiometry. So it has 106 carbon atoms to 16 nitrogen atoms to 1 phosphorus atom, compared to algae, which have 50 to 10 to 1. So algae are nitrogen rich, and also they contain, they're very nutritious. They contain very healthy acids. They're PUFA rich, whereas bacteria, they are phosphorus rich, and they have low PUFA. So PUFAs are, for instance, omegas that we also need, and that is like if you drink or eat this fish pills or something, that is, and it's crucial for several reproduction and growth processes on several levels in the food web also. So we have bacteria and or algae feeding into zooplankton, and the zooplankton are the food source of the whales. If we have algae, we have a PUFA-rich and nitrogen-rich healthy food source and a happy whale. And if we would have bacteria, we have a junk food system and potentially unhappy whale. And this relation between reduced nitrogen to phosphorus is shown recently. There's more and more research coming up for the coming years. And this is what my project is about, or our project is about, to look how these patterns across the Northern Europe, Greenland, Iceland, the Baltic Sea, which is very brown, and across Norway. And this represents a climate gradient. So the Baltic Sea is completely brown and completely dominated by organic material, whereas Greenland may be less dominated by organic material, but sediment material. So the systems are very different, and it would be interesting to see how this affects the nutritional quality of the zooplankton across the climate gradient. And also, if climate change is to continue and the systems are browning and there will be more carbon in the system, it is like a space for time substitution where we can see how Arctic systems will behave in the future. So last year I was in Dannebor in northern Greenland with collaborator Jonna, and this is one of her papers. And we know quite a bit about it. We know that it is quite nutrient poor. There are not as many whales as here. I haven't seen a whale there. And if you look at, for instance, the chlorophyll or algae growth along the water column, you can look at the middle figure, so figure B in the outer fjord, it's the green line, and then on the y-axis it's the depth. So 0 means at the water surface and 70 is 70 meter deep. You can see that there is a chlorophyll peak around 25 meter and going down again. And this is quite common that you see a deep chlorophyll peak. And this is also why GIS studies alone are not ideal for this kind of systems. You can also see on the figure on the right, especially on the bottom, this is a salinity plot across the bay. So on the left side it is transect number 1. I think I should explain the transect. So for each of these regions, we do a transect close to the river outlet, and also we measure the rivers, and then we do a transect into the bay to see how the system changes, assuming that close to the river, there's a lot of influence of the river, and out in the bay, there's a lot of influence from the marine and not of the freshwater anymore. And this figure on the right, figure F, is kind of a proof for that, because across this transect number 1 to 4, you can see that there is a freshwater lens that is decreasing. So that is happening. Yeah, and there we took the zooplankton, we took the water chemistry, the algae, the bacteria. And then the Baltic, which is being sampled this year. I'm not part of that. But this is, of course, a very nutrient and DOC-rich system. So it's a huge contrast to Greenland and probably also to here. The Laksau and Mývatn are kind of organic. I actually don't know how organic they are, but yeah, we have high stratification in this system, a lot of bottom anoxia, so fish, like if it's a warm year, fish cannot live because there's no oxygen. So a lot of these problems in the Baltic. And then we have Husavik. And yeah, we don't know that much about the water chemistry. There's not a water chemistry monitoring program here, going on here. But there's, of course, a lot of research on whales and also a lot of research on ecology. And this is an example of how the chlorophyll is changing across the season. On the left, master thesis from Chloe Senglat. But as I said, proper water profiles from the top to the depth haven't been really taken here. And regarding the zooplankton, there is a study that looks at zooplankton around Iceland, and they conclude that it is driven by copepods, and copepods are generally more nutritious than other groups of zooplankton, so that may explain why we have our loving whales here. Yeah, because why are there so many whales here? That is something that this project also should answer. Maybe the quality of the zooplankton is very good, or is it really just the quantity of the zooplankton that the whales are coming for? So we hope to answer that with this year's research here. So we want to take depth profiles, and we have already started, of the water chemistry, the chlorophyll A, the dissolved and total nutrients, the DOC. We want to take the quality of the algae and bacteria by measuring their PUFA contents and their carbon, nitrogen, phosphorus contents, measure algal and bacterial production, and take zooplankton and phytoplankton communities and their quality, the PUFA and the CMP. Sophie, she just left this morning, but she has looked into one zooplankton sample of this year, and she also confirmed that the most copepods are the most abundant here, just like the research that we already know. So, but she had a sample that was, so for instance, Calanus glacialis and Microcetella, and a lot of Naupili because we were early in the season. Naupili are like a baby zooplankton that you cannot identify. And we went out into the field to take these samples. We used this, in the middle you see this big bottle, it's called a Niskin bottle. We bring it at a depth and then we close it and then we bring up the water. Yeah, and Norway will happen next year, so although the project just started in April, we are already advancing quite well. And I hope that with my presentation of how to answer how climate changes connect fresh and coastal waters and threatens the quality of coastal resources. So that is through ocean freshening and especially coastal freshening, changed water chemistry and mixing, and likely a shift towards bacterial dominance in the coasts, and reduced oxygen and PUFA deteriorate the aquatic life conditions. And there's a lot of unknown still, like what is the effect of sediments versus DOC, water processes on large scales, and what are the roles of other substances such as iron and silicon that can also come with sediments and different land masses. Thank you for your listening.
You can do the Q&A now if you want.
Yes, we can do that. It's Q&A.
Some questions.
I cannot see you. It's really dark.
I have a question. Do you plan to compare the sizes of the zooplankton in the end? If the changing of the chemical in the water can change also all of the bacteria breathing and change their size?
Do you mean across? Yeah.
Especially here, I think it would be nice.
Yes.
Because then it matters for waves. Because if the food is too small, or it can get smaller, then
Yeah.
it's like a threat for them.
Yeah. I sort on zooplankton groups, and that is mostly on size. So in that sense, there is some kind of size filtration, or not filtration, but separation. But it would be interesting to see also if this size shift is because of a species shift or because of body size shift. We are taking the community sample, so we will see the community and their size in the end, yeah, along the season. Yeah, Kate?
Thank you very much. Isolde, I'm not a scientist, so I don't think I understood necessarily everything. But what I did understand was you saying that the nutrients are going down with climate change. So does that mean, do you have did you identify any tipping points? Or do you have any sort of insight into timelines? And are we saying that over the sort of short to medium term, coastal areas will be like Schelfanden, would be more difficult for nutrients and therefore less likely to attract whales? Is that what you're saying?
The time question is an interesting question, but in generally, actually, the nutrients are increasing because of the mobilization of substances from the land. So as we cut the DOC and the browning of the waters brings the nutrients. And yeah, for a system as Northern Greenland, that could actually mean more production in the future. We don't know. But it is an interesting question to see the time component of this, because we have the greening in the Arctic, which may mean that the terrestrial plants take up all the nutrients and initially decrease the amount of nutrients that are coming into the coast. This is one discussion point, yeah. That's a possibility. Thanks.
Some more?
Thank you.